Have you ever gotten excited to play a video game, loaded up a storefront of your choice to buy it, been confronted with this, and then immediately dismissed the idea of buying it, and maybe telling yourself you'll just wait for a sale? And what was the last time you actually bought a game at full price at or near its launch date? It has probably been a while, hasn't it? If that is you, we are the same. A recent study conducted by the company Schachner found out that an estimated 33% of players in the US only buy a new game less than once a year. A literal third of the people who took part in that survey, which is already a smaller chunk of everyone who actually plays games. Let that sink in. Of course, the study is not representative of game buying habits everywhere across the globe, but it shows a tendency not to buy games at this price. If we ask the question whether or not video games are overpriced, we need to go deeper, look at development costs, changing structures, as well as shifting consumer habits. So let's have a closer look at that study, the factors that sales and subscription services play, and the value that games these days offer at their respective price points. But before we get into that, hi, I'm Jerry, and welcome to my channel Scharfsinn, where I like to talk about all kinds of video games and video game related topics that I am passionate about. I also like to write reviews over on Backlog to share my experiences with the games I play. If you're interested in any of that, I'd be glad to see you stick around. But now, let us get started.
And we each got $15. Oh, and a quarter. Don't forget the quarter. Shut up, Arthur.
Our perception of the value of a video game has generally been skewed over the past decade. A fully priced game has always been expensive. For the longest time, games made by major AAA studios were sold at $60 or 70 euros here in Germany. That's my point of comparison. That price point has now gone up to $70 and 80 euros respectively, with the potential to go even higher when looking at Nintendo's push to sell Mario Kart World at a whopping 90 euros. To many people, these prices sounded frankly insane. But there is someone who famously disagrees. Former PlayStation CEO Sean Layden has gone on record multiple times saying that game prices should have increased with every generation because of the massive rise in development costs in the AAA industry. Despite these higher costs and inflation, game prices have remained very steady, all things considered. We can only imagine the uproar if prices had actually increased with every generation. And rightly so. Game development may be getting more expensive, but many people are not getting any richer. Still, Layden argued that the cost of developing AAA games has simply gotten way out of control and too risky. He said, quote, "If you're selling 20 million units at $60 for something that only cost you $10 million to make, that's different than selling 20 million units at $60 for something that cost you $160 million to make." Going by that logic, you'd have to sell more than twice the amount of copies to break even. But how much more expensive has game development really become? Let's have a look at a few examples. Battlefield 4, a game released in 2013, cost around $100 million to make, which was considered very expensive at the time. The newest title in the series, Battlefield 6, which came out last year, had an estimated development cost well above $400 million. That's over 4 times the cost and a base price increase of only $10 or euros. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which released in 2015, had a total development and marketing cost of around $81 million, or roughly $105 million when accounting for inflation. Cyberpunk 2077, which came out 5 years later, cost around $316 million. That's over 3 times the cost, not even an entire generation of consoles in between, and both games sold at the same price. In addition, The Witcher 3 sold about 60 million copies as of May 2025, while Cyberpunk sold just half of that at around 30 million copies as of November 2024. Of course, The Witcher 3 has had 5 additional years and a significant boost because of the TV show, and Cyberpunk's reputation has many stains. But when you take into account that it took 3 times as much to develop Cyberpunk, it does not add up. According to Layden, many companies have of course tried to get around this price bottleneck with all kinds of extras like DLC, season passes, battle passes, and selling cosmetic items, even in fully priced single-player games. Companies are looking to keep every cent they don't need to spend, which is also one of many reasons why so many people are getting laid off from their studios. Money is incredibly tight, and the price tag of video games only plays one part in this issue. With the entire tech industry heading into deep trouble, things are not looking up. Layden has argued that a possible solution, as far as game development goes, could be to make smaller, less complex games, as only a fraction of people even finish these longer games to begin with, and it could alleviate the strain on development cost and game pricing. In turn also allowing for more risk and innovation because there's just less at stake. But unfortunately that is just not where the AAA industry is heading. The system as it is right now is not sustainable, and we as gamers will only continue to feel the effects of this. But let's look at the here and now. How and where and at which price points are people actually buying games? Does anyone actually buy games at their full price, or have subscription services, massive sales, free-to-play games and indie games completely transformed our habits as consumers?
It's over.
Coming back to that study from the start in a bit more detail, they found out that 63% of people in the US only buy 2 new games or fewer a year. 18% of those buy 2 new games a year, 12% of those just 1, and 33%, as I mentioned, buy a new game less than once a year. The study fails to mention if this only accounts for purchases at full price or also includes games bought on sale. The term new is rather loose here. But if we assume that we are just talking about buying games at full price, 2 games a year really isn't a lot. This is likely an effect of a number of different causes. Free-to-play games, Game Pass, new releases often being broken, and massive sales on just slightly older titles. And of course also the fact that many people just have less money to spend. 14% of the players that partook in the study are buying at least 1 new game a month or more. As the director of Schachner, Matt Piscatella, pointed out, it's these people who are keeping the system of full-price games alive. That really isn't a lot of people, considering how prices have remained roughly consistent while production budgets have exploded. I don't live in the US, but I'm actually one of those people who buys a new fully priced game less than once a year. And my reasons are many. The last game I bought for 70 or 80 euros was Mortal Kombat 1, and that was in October 2023, over 2 years ago. I've bought some new games since then, but they only cost me 50 euros or less. Helldivers 2, Clair Obscur and Hollow Knight Silksong. In theory, I would have the money to buy a fully priced game a year, maybe even 2, but I rarely feel compelled to do so. And I ask myself, why? Through subscription services like PS Plus, cheap Steam keys, Steam sales, borrowed games or games where I split the price with someone else, I have amassed a big library of games that I'm eager to play. And each time I feel the hype and the urge to buy a shiny new thing on release, I remember that I still have so many other games I want to play. So why drop so much money on something I don't need right now? Something that I could just easily wait a year or 2 to play at a lower price and with all the updates it might receive. Every year Steam hosts massive sales in spring, summer, autumn and winter, where almost every game on the platform goes down in price significantly. Newer games might still sell at relatively high prices of 40 to 50 euros, but if a game is 5 years or older, there is a good chance that you can get it for 20 euros or even 10. Many older games and indie titles even go as low as 2 euros. That's nothing. This tidal wave of insanely low prices has utterly transformed how many people perceive the value of a game. Sales like these of course always operate on the fear of missing out on a good deal, making it more tempting to buy things you may not even play anytime soon. You won't really buy a game at 80 euros if you didn't intend to actually play it. But it also makes so much more sense from a consumer standpoint to wait for such a sale to buy a game, especially because they are so frequent. It's hard to complain when you buy a game you've been excited for at just 20 euros or less. At the same time, it has conditioned many of us to perceive these prices as the new normal. Full price games may have gone up 20 euros or dollars respectively, but when you've become used to only buy games at a fraction of the cost, these 10 euros hardly make a difference. 70 euros or 80 euros start to look equally daunting. Steam sales and also Steam keys from sites such as Instant Gaming are a fantastic way to stay frugal with such an expensive hobby. For many people it's the only way they can even afford it. Nevertheless, they have damaged our perception of how much a video game can be worth. The time, effort and money that have been put into it.
To the bar, senor!
One of the biggest changes in the way that we get access to games have of course been subscription services. Most predominantly Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. For a long time their promise has been to offer libraries of old and new releases at a fraction of the cost it might take to buy just 1 new game at full price. It's a deal that seemed too good to be true, and indeed it was. Slowly but surely the price points for these services have been increasing. as they always do. There seemed to be a reluctant acceptance of this for a while, but Xbox's decision last year to increase the asking price for Game Pass Ultimate by a whopping 50% has caused quite an uproar, and many people have cancelled their subscriptions. This might seem like a loss to many people, but I would see it as a good thing, because while Game Pass has made games so much more accessible, financially speaking, it has also contributed to devaluing them. Playing a game via a subscription service that you paid 10 to 15 euros for is obviously different from playing one you specifically picked out and paid 50, 60 or even 80 euros for. Paying more money for a game comes with higher expectations, since your own investment is so much bigger. When people pay that much money, they want to get their money's worth, of course. Games are a luxury after all, and spending 80 euros on luxury is a risk for most people. At that price point, there is an inherent clash between quality and quantity. There is a general sentiment I've seen time and time again where people want to get an appropriate number of hours out of such an expensive game. Spending 80 euros on a game that only lasts 10 hours is just not reasonable to many people, no matter how well crafted, designed or polished it is. 10 hours are still 10 hours. I understand this train of thought, I really do, but it has led to many studios clearly making games much longer than they need to be. Games that would have been great at 15 to 20 hours are stretched to 30 or more. Ubisoft is most guilty of this, of course. Specifically with games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It has generally only intensified the push for open world games because it's a structure that most conveniently lends itself to longer playtimes. In all fairness, there are a multitude of games that do make use of their longer playtimes in ways that don't feel disrespectful of the player's time. Games like Elden Ring or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 come to mind. However, despite this push for longer and more sprawling games, shorter and more concise experiences haven't gone anywhere and are still being made, even from AAA developers. The Resident Evil series is still soaring high, Silent Hill has been making a comeback, Ninja Gaiden 4 was a success and so was Astrobot. Granted, most of these are established IPs where people are more likely to shell out the asking price, and Ninja Gaiden has no doubt benefited from being on Game Pass. But fact remains that these games sell, despite being much shorter than the equally priced huge RPGs.
We are dreamers in an ever duller world of facts.
While price points have been consistent or increasing in the AAA space, prices of AA games or indie titles have always been and still are much lower. And for years now, the biggest success stories have come out of this side of the industry. Not only are they the ones pushing the industry forward creatively, these smaller games are being sold at price points that people are actually willing to pay. The best recent example, of course, is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which you can buy for 50 euros and get one of the best experiences you'll ever have, probably. In a world where creativity in games that cost 80 euros is stagnating for many reasons, games priced at 50 euros or lower are thriving. People actually have the money to buy these games at their standard prices. Their flexible price points can better reflect their perceived value, and they are frankly just often better games quality-wise. There is another dimension to the question of perceived value next to subscription services and people buying more AA and indie games, and that is the world of free-to-play games.
Either you got a lazy eye or lack of respect. Which is it, boy?
I'm not revealing any kind of epiphany here when I say that free-to-play games are hugely successful when they are successful, because they inherently require no financial investment to get started, beyond owning a console or PC and having a decent internet connection. In theory, you could play a game like Fortnite for hundreds of hours and never spend a single cent on it. Most of these free-to-play titles are multiplayer games that certainly appeal to different audiences than fully priced single-player games do, but there are exceptions to this too, like the recent Where Winds Meet, which is more than a little reminiscent of Ghost of Tsushima. That makes the hurdle of buying a game for 80 euros that you might play for a fraction of that time even higher than it already was. It's simply a much bigger risk, especially if you don't know exactly what you're getting. That's also, of course, why established franchises like Call of Duty or sports games like FIFA or whatever it's called now still dominate every year. People know exactly what they are getting for their 80 euros and they just want more of it. Even with the quality on a decline, it's a safe choice. But fundamentally, free-to-play games have totally transformed the perception of the value of video games, even though many people still spend a ludicrous amount of money on skins and battle passes in those games. Gaming is never truly free. Legal gaming, that is. But the hurdle to entry has been lowered so significantly that paying money to even get to play something is a much bigger ask now than it ever was. Most multiplayer games these days don't have a chance if they cost something, established franchises and the occasional surprise hit excluded.
I had a goddamn plan!
So, are video games actually overpriced? If you look at a lot of AAA single-player titles that have either stagnated or dropped in quality or innovation, I'd say yes, absolutely. From a gamer's perspective. Many of them offer plenty of content for their price, but rarely is it content that is actually worth your time and attention. From the point of view of publishers, however, there is a good argument to be made that they are actually underpriced, at least with how games are currently made. Yet this idea clashes hard with the fact that gamers seem less willing to spend money on a full-price title than ever before, because of the state of the economy across the world, but also because of how much lower the point of entry has become through subscription services, sales on various platforms like Steam, the rise of cheaper but often better indie and AA games, as well as free-to-play live service games. The fact is, you do not need to spend 80 euros on a game if you just want to play something. This entire situation is incredibly complex and I've only scratched the surface. And the question really is impossible to answer without any ifs or buts. It completely depends on who you ask. Indie developers or AAA publishers, gamers who only buy one full-price game less than once a year, gamers who only play free-to-play titles or only buy games on sale, the list goes on. As someone myself who almost never buys AAA games on release, I felt inclined to say yes, games are overpriced. But after going through all these factors, I lean closer to the idea that they may be appropriately priced or even underpriced. Still, that doesn't change the fact that I would much rather pay, say, 100 euros for a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 instead of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But tell me what you think about this topic. How many games do you buy at full price every year? And do you think they are too expensive? I'm very eager to hear your opinion down in the comments below. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.